Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and I haven't said that in such a long time. I'm just a bit rusty, so today we are going to go back into Worlds Within Worlds by Kirby Rosanas. This is officially the longest running work in progress that I've ever had in like the 7 years that I've had the channel. Obviously because we've had a break, that's been part of it. The page that we had been working on was all the way at the back of the book, and it was these shoe store pages, and it's really funny because I made the joke about not finishing the spring side in time for spring, and it's now July. We started this double page spread in August of last year, so August 2024. And if we don't get our finger out, it's not going to be finished by August of 2025. So my plan is to do a little bit today. Today we're going to be focusing on this tree. I'm going to fire out a couple of these videos quite quickly. I'm not using any different techniques to the ones that I used on this side, so this is going to be more of a chatty video, so if that's not your thing you can just turn the audio off and skip through. I will put the pencil colours and names up just as I normally do. The first thing I would like to talk about before we carry on here is the light source situation. It's a very sunny, bright spring day, and before we tackle these detailed areas we need to decide if there's going to be a direct light source. Obviously there's going to be light all around, but I'm really going to embrace the hatching that Kirby has put in here, and I feel like maybe not necessarily direct light, but maybe from sort of slightly over here-ish. I know that's not very technical or scientific, it doesn't need to be. So we will pick up highlights, but it's not going to be as focused and as precise as what was going on over here because there was an absence of light apart from the areas that we chose, whereas there's very much environmental or atmospheric or all-round, whatever you want. So we're going to be a bit more lax in terms of light sources and light and shadow on this side, but it doesn't mean that we can't make everything interesting. So the tree on this side I'm going to make into a cherry blossom tree. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, obviously springtime, and we've got these falling leaves the same way as we had on this side. I just thought it would be really nice to have that on this side, and most of you will have seen blossoms falling off of trees. It's very pretty, it's a bit like confetti. So to get us started off, the pencils that we were using are the Castle Arts Gold. I will put a link in the description to the first video in the series if you're new here and you want to start over at the beginning, all the way back then. They are in sequence in the sense that when you get to the end of one part, the suggested video that comes up in the end card is the next part in the series. So if you're a few episodes back from so long ago, you can follow them in succession and get yourself going if it's something you want to follow along with. I've picked out some of the pencils already. The colours that I have for here are all pink. So the first one is very misleading. It's Tangerine, which is 020. It's not tangerine at all, it's all lies. We've also got Pink Bloom, which is a very fitting colour, and we have French Rose, which is this nice sort of fuchsia colour, and Azalea Pink. I'm going to show these in the swatch book so that if you don't have these pencils and want to pick something similar, you can just pause the video and find something in your own pencil collection. Here we go. So this is the tangerine colour, so when you see it next to the paler orange colours, it's definitely more pink than orange. This is Pink Bloom here. Very delicate, nice shade, great for our highlighted areas that we're going to have. This is the Azalea Pink, so getting into those nice mid-tones there. And I picked that French Rose colour because I wanted something a little bit deeper, a little bit darker, and you know, to give us that sort of richness that we want. So that's this colour down here. So we've got quite a nice range. As I've done in the past, I will pick out an opposing colour, like a very, very dark colour, and it will probably be into these sort of purplish blues, like the violet blues, to really give us some nice contrast. But we'll pick that out as we go along. I really want to see what these colours are going to look like first, and then we can deepen down just by adding layers, which is what we like to do here at the cave. So for the trunk, the bark tends to be quite dark on these cherry trees. That's really good for us because it's going to give us a contrast, because we are going to have quite a lot of light and mid-tones because we're using bright colours. And this is just going to help kind of balance the page out a little bit. So I've got Old Rose, I have Slate Grey, and I also have Cool Grey Deep. And again, I'll just show you these really quickly in my swatch book if you want to pick out alternative pencils. So this is Old Rose here. Naturally, we'll be using this sparingly in terms of the bark. We have Slate Grey here and the Cool Grey Deep as well. So we should be able to get quite an interesting texture and variance in this tree trunk, because again, we've got lots of lovely lines to work with here as well. So with that out of the way, let's get started. And unsurprisingly, I'm going to start with my lightest colour, which is this tangerine. And I'm literally going to hit all of the areas that aren't deeply hatched with this pencil. If we take the tangerine into these hatched areas, when we're trying to use the darker colours, it's going to lighten them up. We want to avoid those areas. I've got a little bit of tracing paper here, and I'm just going to pop this under my hand because we have this background, and you know, there may be a bit of smudgy. If you've been hanging around here for a while, you know that I always work right to left, and it's because I'm left-handed, because I don't want to colour and then cover up what I'm colouring and I can't see what I'm doing. If you're right-handed, that works the same way the other way round. So just going to go in a sort of quite a wide scumbling motion and just a medium pressure here. Pressure is very, very important. Again, those of you that are veteran cavers, you will know that a light hand and many layers will make for richer colouring. And the paper in this book, in fact in all of Kirby's books, is really good for this. So now that colour, you may not be able to see much of it just because of the camera, but please be assured the colour is going down. And it's basically just like tinting the paper a wee bit. And I'm not particularly precious about my first layer of pencil. See if it's a wee bit messy, doesn't matter. We just want to get that layer of pencil down. It gives us a really good starting point. The nice thing about the structure of this is there's loads of places where it's easy to stop. And I talk a lot in these videos about not having a lot of time to do things, and especially when you've got a double page like this, or even one of these pages, because Kirby's images are always very detailed. It's actually better because you can do a teeny tiny little bite-sized piece, like a nibble of it, and you can leave it and walk away. So I am very much an advocate for this, but I'm also an advocate for break things down into little manageable chunks to suit your lifestyle, to suit your brain, whatever it is. I would imagine that most people that colour would have maybe a similar sort of sentiment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and the reasons why you enjoy colouring. If anybody wants to chime in the comments, I would love to hear about it. That's just my personal take. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with that first layer. Okay, so I'm moving on down to Pink Bloom. And what I want to avoid, not what I want to colour, is these sorts of sections here that are, you know, they're little bits that are all out on their own in an island. So I'm going to kind of navigate my way around them, and also these very outer edges here. So if you think about someone having drawn an imaginary line just inside of the line work there. So I'm using slightly tighter circles here. So this is scumbling motion. This is scumbling. I'm just going to start working a little section at a time. So I'm kind of thinking like where my tracing paper stops here, down to, you know, just across here. So we're looking at this little section here. And I'll demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then I'll maybe skip through a little bit. So I'll maybe bring that up round there. Mr. Geriatric Jock, my oldest collie, is in his bed. So he is under this desk, but he's slightly to the left. He's upside down with these bits and bobs hanging out, and he's snoring gently. And he's extremely happy right now. He's got a little foot twitch going on, his back foot's going like... Madam Pippi, collie youngest, is nowhere to be seen. I think she's probably chilling out through in the other end of the house, which is her preference. So doggies are all doing good, they're fine. The renovation project started on the 17th of February, and today, for the record, is the 17th of July. We're still going. We are nearly there though. The interior in terms of the trade work, like the building work, the interior is done. We're now on to painting and decorating. Definitely worth it, but it's just been a bit of a rough ride along the way. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from home improvements for a little while. I think we've had our quota. Yeah, I'm working my way right now. So you should be able to see on camera now that little bit of pink coming through. If you just think one step up in terms of intensity of what you can see versus what I can see, you will get the general feeling of where we're going. So you can see as I've moved round, I've just left these edges alone, and as I say, these little individual bits I've tried to avoid. Might have to have a bit of a sharpen as you go through, just to make sure that you've got that accuracy, because obviously the blunter your point is, the more of an area it covers without you intentionally doing so. Still sticking with the good old Jingle sharpener. I've got it at a number 5. These Castle Arts pencils seem to take a pointy point, a long pointy point, quite well. So what else is happening outside of the cave? I have a visitor coming tomorrow, and that would be a certain Miss Julia Kay, who some of you again will know very well. Julia is she's my Swedish friend. She started off as a business associate. I reviewed some of her handmade watercolour paints on the channel many moons ago, and we've gotten to know each other over the years, and we are firm friends now. So she's coming to pay me a little visit, and I'm very excited about it because it was kind of like a last minute thing. This hasn't been planned for ages. So I'm really looking forward to that. I have another video in the pipeline. I won't be filming again because Julia's here. How inconvenient, she's taking up all the time. And it is a product review video, which again, more traditional content for the cave. Aww. Yeah, so a bit more of a regular type video for the cave. So we've got that in the works as well. That's going to be in the next couple of weeks too. So I'm kind of trying to ease myself back in gently here. I'm just not quite firing on all cylinders yet. I'm definitely like getting there, but I'm not 100% back to my usual self. I'm trying really hard though, guys. One of the other projects that I've got in the pipeline is to continue on with yet another work in progress, and it's something that we were working on in the Wednesday live streams, and that is the next set of Caver community sticker set, and it is phrases and things that I tend to use in all the videos. So I want to start working on that again. That is a project that I want to get going on probably again, maybe in like a month's time. So moving on to the Azalea pink pencil here. This is such a pretty colour, I love it. Before I start on the sections I've been working on, I'm going to pop these into these really dark sections. So I'm going to go really steady here and carefully and keep in the lines, like a good girl. And I'm going to put a layer of that down. So I'm pressing a little bit heavier than I have been with these other colours. I just want to get a nice, even, sensible layer down without like mashing it into the paper, because when you mash it into the paper, you flatten the tooth of the paper, and then it's very difficult to put subsequent layers down because the paper just doesn't want it because you've made it like an ice rink. But we do want a nice even layer opposed to the sort of willy-nilly, slightly more frenetic layers that we've been putting on these lighter areas. So best to take your time, try and resist the urge to press really hard. I find that quite difficult in these types of areas, but tiny little movements. So I'm looking for a few opinions as well, if I may. With these chatty colouring videos, I've become very aware, and I think it's really sort of come to fruition because I've had a break, and the short form video situation is very much at the forefront now. Most of my videos go between half an hour and 45 minutes, especially when it comes to this type of thing. I am making an effort to make those shorter because people aren't watching the full videos for the full length of time. The average view time on one of these videos is about 16 minutes, and that's just YouTube stats telling me that. So I am trying to make them a bit shorter and punchier. But my question to you all is, if I was doing a colour along video like this, obviously I would keep the long form video, I wouldn't stop doing them. But what I was thinking was I could really chop these down into essentially shorts. Basically just like these are the colours you need and this is what I'm going to do with them. And then just show like the finished section of what whatever I've just been talking about. Whether that would be on YouTube or not, I don't know, because YouTube shorts have to be less than 60 seconds. And the reason that I never do YouTube shorts is I can't fit things into 60 seconds. I would share them on Instagram and TikTok as well. I don't know how many of you are into TikTok. It seems to be a slightly different audience than you would find on YouTube, which is fine. But I just wondered your thoughts on that. I'm probably clutching at straws here because the people that are watching this video might not be the people that would watch shorts, so I might get a bit of a skewed response for that. So yeah, ask around, especially see if you've got younger family members, because again, that is a thing. The joke just now is the younger the people, the shorter the videos. It wouldn't take me long to cut these down into those very essential elements, and I've always got the coloured names up on the screen anyway. So if you've got any thoughts at all on that, positive or negative, as long as they're constructive, I would be really happy to hear from you about that. I've never really bought into the YouTube shorts because it's not my thing, and I just feel like as a content creator, the 60 seconds isn't enough time to provide anything meaningful or of any decent quality, more to the point. But again, I don't know, I might be in the minority with that. I feel as if I'm like in my own little opinion bubble with that. Right, moving down to the French rose now. And again, I'm going to get like a proper pointy point on this. So just looking at what we've got, you can already see the darkest areas are starting to make themselves known just because of Kirby's hatching. So that's the areas that we're going to try and stick to just for now with this French rose pencil. So we can see here that's pretty dark. So let's pop a layer of that down. So again, just a medium pressure and try and keep ourselves in the lines. And you can kind of pick and choose here. This is really sort of a preference kind of vibe. The good thing is that if you feel like you've not gone dark enough, you can always go back in. I think I want to just smash out that whole section there. Yes. So that's starting to contrast quite nicely with these paler areas that we tickled earlier on with our other pencils. Tickled them with our lighter pencils, and in fact we tickled them pink, haven't we? Just again work our way around. Time for the next little while is taken up by Miss Julia, which is great. And then after that it's really I'd say into harvest, heads down, and focus a little bit more on art again and what we're doing. We've got this big sort of expansive wall next to the kitchen table, and it's just screaming for some artwork to be put up there. And Mr. Jem in his infinite wisdom was like, oh, you should paint something to go up there. So I have bought a gigantic rectangular canvas, and it's going to be landscape. Ages ago, like long before we started all this carry on, I'd taken a photo of the sunset just outside the house that looks over one of the fields, and there's loads of really nice pastel colours in the sky, and it would fit in perfectly, and I could incorporate a little bit of the wall colour into the actual painting. So I'm going to be really brave and try that, and I'm going to do it in acrylic, which is something that I don't use very often. So I'm going to be embarking upon that. The problem is, because I'm working in landscape and because of the size of the canvas, I'm going to have to put it on my easel and kind of like bolster it up at each end so that it doesn't move about. Once we've finished the decorating and stuff in the extensions, the new part of the house that's been built on, that's something I'm going to tackle. So I don't think I'll share that in a video. That's very much something that I need to work on at my own pace and, you know, like be left to my own devices. But I'll certainly share some of the progress on Instagram, I think. So I've got plenty to keep me occupied, to keep you out of trouble. So just taking a wee step back and looking now, this is kind of where I want to make the decision of, do I want to pick another colour to put in here to make it darker? The answer is yes. So I'm going to grab my swatch book here again. So some options that we might consider here might be something like the purple deep or the cherry colour. They might be quite nice to use. If you're feeling a wee bit more adventurous, I mentioned earlier we can go into the like the blue violets. I feel like the blue violets though, the deepest that you've really got is the purple lake deep, and it's still pretty mid, to be fair. I talk quite often about ending up with a sea of mid-tones, and that's what you don't want. If you don't want to go down that route, the other option that you have is to pull in a much darker pencil, and you know, like your greys or whatever, and there's a really good selection of them in this set of pencils. There's nothing that I feel that really fits. The Mars black is a warmer black, but it's just a bit too much. So I think what I would like is I'm going to grab this purple deep colour, I'm going to be brave about it and I'm going to grab that. So I'm going to be quite selective with this because I don't want this to just like be so dark that it's going to disappear completely. But if I put that in there, again, medium pressure, ooh, that's nice. So let's just pick out a select few areas, like where the cross hatching is especially close together. Again, you're kind of like you're kind of being signposted, so let's take advantage of that. One of the reasons we love Kirby. Maybe a wee bit in there. So I'm thinking nooks and crannies as well. So, you know, for example, where that little V is, that's a good spot. So you don't have to follow this blindly, you know, like have a little think about it. If you don't want to think about it, that's fine. Just follow the hatching. That's one of the beauties of doing things like this. But I feel like in the corners, you know, they're good places to make that a little bit darker. This section in here is screaming out for it though. Screaming out for it. Oh, I've missed a whole bit in there. Oh, naughty Gem. Okay, I'm going to go back to the French rose really quickly and just catch that bit. I don't know how I missed that. I was probably just too busy talking. Now, here's a thing. Here's a dilemma. Is that part of the branch or is that part of the backgroundness? I think I'm going to go with branch, but that definitely deserves this. So something to look out for when you're doing this is, although we're picking out areas, you don't want it to look like a patchwork quilt. You know, that there's a very stark contrast there, and obviously these background areas are all linked together. They're just in behind the branches. So you might want to take a bit of time to sort of connect them just by adding in a little bit so that you don't have one really light part and one not so light part. That's just a sort of sensible thing as far as I'm concerned. But again, all down to preference. You don't have to. Want it just to be that little bit more subtle though. And then this seems to be like a sort of lighter area, so I might pop a wee bit in there. As I'm going to the right, I'm lightening up on that pressure just to give us that little bit of graduation in the colour. So although I'm still putting the pencil down, I go from medium pressure to sort of tickling it a little bit, just so that it's a bit more subtle and you don't have a great big line there. So a really good example of what I'm talking about is there. That sticks out like a sore thumb. So we're going to make that darker also. And this whole side, not unlike the other page, the left hand side seems to be awash with hatching. So we'll go for that, and maybe that branch is really going out that way, like way to the back. So I think I'm quite happy with the shadow, like the background areas here. So it's time to start working on these little tufts. So I'm primarily going to jump between the azalea pink and the French rose for this. So I do want to have a very sharp point for this because we're working in detail areas, and it might just be a case of like a stroke or two in each of these little tufty sections. I kind of like calling them tufty sections. I like that. I'm going to start with the French rose, and these sections, these little squiggles of hatching, I am going to pop down some of that French rose in there. So back to that lighter pressure that I was using. I don't want it to overwhelm what's going on, and I want to be able to blend them together so again it doesn't look like I've just splodged down lots of pencil in the paper, because that it's not going to look great. Let's be realistic. Again, always go with the mantra that less is more, because you can always add more, but it's very difficult to take away. If you've ever tried to raise colours like fuchsia, you'll know what I'm talking about. Maybe put a wee bit in there. So I'm just going to do this a bit at a time as well, so that I've basically just tackled that one branch, and I'm going to go in with my azalea pink now over the top of the French rose, but I'm going to pull it out a little bit further, so I'm going out past those lines that we were just talking about. And what that is doing is really making those pale areas the highlight. So the idea here is now we want to strike a balance so that they still look coloured, because there is a lot of paleness there. You don't want it to look as if you've like just forgotten to colour bits in. So you can be a bit more liberal with where you're going with that and bring it out. And if you have sections that are almost touching, then that's okay too. So again, not going any further than this particular branch. I'm going back to my pink bloom colour. Pink bloom. And I'm working on the outside edge of where I've just put down the last colour. So if we just take this little section here, this one mini section, I feel like that needs to be a little bit darker just in that corner there. Pop a bit of French rose in there, look. So when we're talking about just this section here, kind of starting to blend it out a little bit now. Just leaving those very outer edges. You can see that that's still quite pale round there. That's what I'm looking for. But you don't want it to look unfinished. And then finally, just for that section, I'm going to go back to my tangerine pencil and I'm going to use this as a sort of blending pencil, if you like. Focusing on the outside side edge, I'm pressing quite hard this time, and I'm just taking that around those very palest areas and blending them into those other colours that we've just spent some time putting down. So hopefully you can see there now, compared to the cloud, which has a lot of white but a little bit of blue in it, but also these bare branches that we haven't put any colour on, even the lightest areas look as if they've been coloured now. And again, it's a step darker for me in real life than it is on the camera, because the white balance on this camera is, number one, it's got a mind of its own, but it's also insane. I feel like this little bit that's sticking out here is looking a little bit too pale. So again, step down to the pink bloom, which is the next darkest colour, and I'm going to pop a little bit more of that just in there. And again, it helps these individual parts stand out a little bit more without being absolutely outrageous. And then just take this, again, making sure your pencil's sharp for in all these little tiny edges. Okay, so I'm quite happy with this section here, and that's the way I want to make the rest of it look. I do feel like I want to add a little bit of this French rose now that I've popped a bit in there. In some of these sections, I feel like I want to put that in there too. Like, I just feel like it needs an extra. I am using this very sparingly though. So that's the kind of feeling I want to go for all the way across. So if I take that away, you can see how that compares to the rest of it. And this technique and pattern that I've just gone through is basically what I'm going to do all the way across. But basically I'm just going to speed this part up, and I'll catch you up in just a second. Alrighty, so just for that last section there, the only thing I did differently was these very pronounced flower shapes. I pressed quite hard with the pink bloom pencil and really kind of like went in there and just left the very tips to go back over with that tangerine pencil. So we've managed to maintain the delicate nature of these pinks, but we've got these really nice sort of punchy, darker areas that's able to compete with this ridiculously, outrageously offensive green that we've got going on down the bottom. So top notch. And we are going to move on to these colours for the trunk as described. So starting in a slightly different manner, I'm going to start with the darkest areas first. So pop that old rose pencil out to the side just now. And I just want to pick out the darkest areas first. So I'm going to go in with the cool grey deep. And we're starting up in these branches up in the canopy. Naturally that's, they're going to be darker because they're hiding in amongst all these beautiful, very plentiful and bountiful blossoms that we've got going on. So if I just start over here, maybe not these ones so much because they are literally out on a limb. But if we think about the ones that are creeping up in, so light pressure here, and just bring some of that pencil down around here. Again, we're going to build this up, so no hassles. And again, paying attention to those hatched areas, so maybe in there. Not really bothered about light source at this point, which I know is very unusual for me. But again, this is just about kind of indicating to myself where I want the dark, the really dark places to be. A very wandering mind, so I need something that's more of a permanent reminder. This branch comes in front, so that's going to be lighter. Again, thinking about light source maybe coming from not directly in front, but maybe it's casually somewhere over here. So we can maybe pop a little bit of something in there, and again, right up in where that's crawling up in amongst the. So again, I'll just demonstrate here what we're doing. So I'm now going to jump down to the slate grey, which, to be fair, is just more of a brown colour, to be honest. So I'm going to head over on top of what we've got there. Again, just keeping that nice light hand. And when I'm doing this part, I want to think of areas that might be lighter. So there's a little kind of like bald spot there in terms of the hatching. So I'll kind of avoid that area, and we'll keep that for our lightest pencil. And I'm aware that this might not suit everyone's way of thinking or working. This is just literally the way that I do it. And you will find your own ways of doing things and maybe a workaround that's slightly different to the way that I do things. I know some of you are here for instruction, some of you are just here for a good time, and some of you are just here for the accent, and that's okay too. just follow that down. There we go. Again, there's another little bold patch there, so we might just leave that be just now. So now we take our lightest colour, which is the Old Rose. Now this is a very, very desaturated pencil, so we're going to keep that scumbling motion quite tight. We want nice even colour so that we can actually see what it looks like. If you go super light with a pencil like this, it's not really a true representation of the colour and it just looks really washed out. So not pressing hard, but the concentration of pigment we're making. And again, the compulsion to press hard is real. I understand for those of you that feel the same way. Right, so that's given me a really good early stage picture of what it's looking like. So I can just go back in and deepen down where I've put those colours before. So literally just going over the top of what I did before with the colours I was using before. So we're just going to build up layers of these pencils and get our darkest parts as dark as possible. But I still want to maintain quite a sort of delicate feel here. And I would like the dark parts to be quite dark, just to give us some contrast. So I'm leaning quite heavily between the Cool Grey Deep and the Slate Grey. The Slate Grey being the slightly brown 8er pencil to give us just that little bit, because I don't want it to be too flat. But if we put a really light layer of that down and then go back over it with the Old Rose, it's still keeping that nice sort of delicate feel. I feel like this branch here is just kind of fading away. I just really want to help these blossoms stand out. So again, leaning into using the Slate Grey. This little bit's really far in behind, so just going to straight in with the darkest colour there. So I'm going to work my way around all these branches first, and I'm going to kind of like do the trunk separately. So I shall speed this part up because it's just more of the same. Again, kind of paying attention to these lines, and then we'll catch up on the trunk. Okay, so we're going to stick with the same pencils, but what we want to do is have, I think, a wee bit about light source. So just going on what has happened organically up here, the light source I seem to have coming from somewhere in this sort of middle area and from the front. So we need to think about how the light would shine and where the light and the dark parts would be on this very twisty, rather exciting looking tree trunk. So I would like to think that using our lightest pencil, that Old Rose pencil, I am going to try and avoid these little petals that are all falling about the same way as I did over that side. I want to kind of think about these contours and where the light is going to hit. So I think that maybe here would probably get quite a lot of it, and then this crease kind of kicks in. So maybe here as well. Down this section I will try and avoid, yeah, because this looks as if it's almost kind of sitting up a little bit because there's quite a dark line there. So I'm going to try and keep these as my lightest parts. So taking the Slate Grey next, I'm going to put in these darkest parts. So I'm still leaning lightly at this. Again, this is just signposting or mapping out, or but whatever you want to call it is fine by me. It's just I like to pick out the two extremes, and then I find it easy to, you know, sort of get them to meet in the middle, especially if it's something I've not really planned out, which with these I tend not to. I usually have an idea of the types of colours and things that I would like to use, but very rarely do I sit down and work all this out before I start. And part of the reason is because sometimes you just don't really know until you get there, and sometimes things might not just turn out the way you thought they would look. This I'm going to treat more like the other branches. I should maybe have done that first. But that's giving me my darkest and my lightest parts. So I want to start at the bottom here. Now in behind here, if the light's coming from the front, right down at the shoe, then this is going to be fairly dark in here. This is quite a big area, so when it comes to the old bite-sized chunks, you might want to break it down, and this sign here helps to break up the bottom part of the trunk really well. So we can just focus on that for now. I'm thinking I'm probably going to be using, again, I haven't planned these colours out, I think I'm going to be using quite bright colours for the shoe and the laces. So if we can get some nice deep colour in here, again, that's going to give us that nice contrast, bring it to life a wee bit, make it interesting to look at. So a couple of layers here, jumping between the two darkest pencils. Really build that up, get some rich colour. And if you keep a nice medium pressure, or even a light pressure, you can get some decent layers, a decent number of layers anyway. Having this nice dark trunk at the bottom here is really going to make these little petals pop out as well. I'm kind of at the stage where if I have this under my hand, it's kind of like hanging off the edge of the table. I should really keep it there though. Follow some of those lines, and then take this old rose pencil, and in these lighter areas, especially coming out towards the edge here, just pop a little of that down. It's only going to make a subtle difference, but it's going to help blend in the colours a little bit too. There might even be a little bit of light here. We could just put that in for funsies. But what we'll do is we'll take our mid-tone and go over the top of it, apart from that very edge there. Again, it's possible that this sign and the post might be casting a bit of shade or shadow onto it, and I feel like that would be darkened behind there as well. And then with a fairly good point on the cool grey deep, you can just flick out a few lines that follow the hatching there. So we've got these little itty bitty sections as well, so again, probably best to start with the mid-tone colour, so the slate grey, and I just want a tiny bit of that old rose there. Okay, so from just doing that, I feel like this entire section here is going to be quite dark. So I'm going to put a very, very light layer of the old rose down, and it really is just to lighten up and warm up the other two colours ever so slightly. Again, it's more about the combination of pencils than the actual colour that each pencil lays down at this point. So I'll grab my cool grey deep and get these really dark parts. Again, so going for the extremes, which I just find easier. I do that when I'm drawing in graphite as well, and I feel like these contour lines here, this is where the dark colour is going to kind of peter out a little bit. You can tell I'm really out of practice and I haven't done this for a long time, can't you? I'm trying my hardest. Somebody left a really nice comment under my return video and said that they missed my brogue, and I think it's really funny because it's not really a word that anybody like in the UK would use. Certainly not Scottish. We don't talk about a brogue, having a brogue. It does sound good though when you say it with a Scottish accent. I've got a brogue. But that was a really nice comment. So thank you if you're watching, whoever it was that left that comment. That made me feel really wanted and loved. Thank you. So after I'm finished this little part here, I am moseying off out. Harvest has officially started. Again, as I said, I had to take a break. And I'm going back to this a week later than when I started. Harvest has officially started, and Papa Jem, the infamous Papa Jem, he is coming tomorrow. I think I've probably moaned about this every year every year since I started the channel, but I don't like it, and the further on it goes, it's very weather dependent. You are at the mercy of the weather. We need dry weather, which we are not renowned for in Scotland, and the more patchy the weather it is, the longer harvest drags on. So I'm going to make that a really good crease in there, because that's kind of like where the hinge is. So this section specifically, but yeah, right in this crease here, I'm going to make that quite dark. So stick in a little bit of the slate grey, and then I'm gonna go with a good few layers of the cool grey deep now. And then coming up here, again, there's some quite nice sort of natural sections here without having to think about it. That might be a little bit darker in there because that kind of curls round the other way. So this is quite a complicated set of contours we've got here. The thing is though, it doesn't need it to be, you know, you don't have to follow every single line and painstakingly put in, you know, that sort of light and dark in every ring and whorl. Yeah, it doesn't need to be like that. The human brain is very good at filling in blanks, and that's something I've learned a lot about. Just, you know, trying to improve my colour pencil work, but also my artwork in general. Unless you're into like hyper realism, which, I mean, you would be able to achieve something like that with this, but generally speaking, we're looking something for really a bit more illustrative. This Old Rose pencil is super, super nice. I like it. It's quite a versatile colour as well. You know, when you use it blended in with other pencils. You could use this for a lot of stuff. I'm thinking like cakes. Might be quite nice to use for a skin tone as well. And also animal fur, sandstone buildings, red sandstone buildings. Just a thought. This little bit here, that's screaming out to be light coloured as well. I don't know if you heard that massive rumble in the background there that sounded like thunder. That is Mr. Jem dumping off loads of barley out a trailer. We're quite far away from the yard, but those sounds seem to carry. Yeah, so loud. He scared all the little birdies off today as well. I've got no birdie friends at all today. Okay, I feel like this lighter bit is what I wanted, but it's just a wee bit pale. Again, it does look a little bit paler on the camera than it does in real life as well. I'm going to have to figure this white balance thing out. I've tried everything though and it just keeps going, ugh. So we've only got this little section left. We're getting on well. We're getting on well. So back to my cool grey deep here, and again back to the darkest of dark areas. And the thing is as well, and this is the difference between using a black pencil and using a dark grey or, you know, a deep bluish grey. You're still going to get that contrast, but it just doesn't have that sort of artificial starkness about it. Because if you do use an actual, you know, a true black pencil, it kind of like puts a hole in your paper because it's so dark compared to everything else. So we still want things to be harmonious even though we want contrast, and I just find that using a slightly softer dark, say it doesn't have to be grey. You could use a really dark purple, for example. I'm a great fan of using an indigo pencil, or a Payne's grey is another good one. Anything like that at all would work in these, you know, in these kinds of areas. So don't be scared to experiment a little bit, and even if it's just scribbling out on a, you know, a piece of scrap paper to see what it's going to look like, you know, do that bit of experimentation, because you might find something you like. You know, you might have a wee moment of, oh, I've found my new favourite pencil combination type thing. And that's always nice. I love it when that happens, especially if it's a set of pencils that I don't use so often. Let's just have a wee zoom out. Yeah. Okay, well, I feel like we're starting to get somewhere. Not quite as intricate and as exciting as our tree trunk on this page, just because we've got a less intense light source. I might sneak in a wee bit afterwards and just do this all the time, just add in a few wee bits and bobs here and there. I want to thank you very much for joining me on this little adventure today. This is like putting on a comfy pair of slippers. It's just that I haven't had my slippers on for such a long time. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you'll take the time to leave a wee comment and interact underneath this video. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you back in the cave really soon for another video. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye for now.